We're going to call our meeting to order this morning. It is Wednesday, March 6th. This is the first meeting in March for the Board of Commissioners for Nags Head. If you'll join us in a moment of silent meditation. Amen. If you'll join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we will note that Commissioner Sadler is not with us today. And Ben Gallup is filling in for John Leidy. Y'all got that thing taken care of back there? This is our time for audience response. If we have anybody in the audience that
Just throw it outside, Perry.
Sorry, I'm skipping the adoption of the agenda. We do have a...
I'll make a Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the agenda while removing item 4 to bring back at mid-month for further discussion.
We have a motion on the floor.
I'd be more than happy to second it.
We have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Thank you, ma'am. Didn't mean to push on too fast to audience response. Anybody in the public that wants to come up and make comments, please come. Give us your name and address, and we'll be happy to hear you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Laura DiBernardo.
Ma'am, I am going to ask you to come to the podium so we can get you on the record.
Hi, I'm Lorelei DiBernardo from the League of Women Voters of Dare County. My address is 32 9th Avenue in Southern Shores. And I've come here this morning to bring you an initial supply of our 2013 teal-colored Citizens Guide, a guide that we compile with contacting many organizations and business entities throughout the area to update with contact information for you. I hope you find the information useful. I have additional copies of these if you'd like. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization based on the belief that an educated electorate is a better electorate, and we welcome new members always. So thank you. I hope you find these useful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a wonderful source of information for all of Dare County. Y'all do a wonderful job with it. Anybody else to speak for public comment this morning? Anybody at all? Seeing none, we're going to close our public comment period. And our next item is recognition. Cliff.
So I'm going to ask Ralph to come forward and recognize our newest employee.
Good morning. I know this gentleman doesn't need a whole lot of introduction, but just for our audience, this is David Ryan. David lives over in Manio with his wife Cheryl and his son Liam. David comes from us, has worked with us for a long time, worked for a former engineering firm, did some engineering for us when he owned his own firm, and now he's fully on board with us, and we are very happy to have him with us. It's always good to have somebody who has designed the projects now to oversee the projects. And I don't have to call him up and say, when something's not right, well, let me call the engineer, because he's right here. So I'd like to represent to you David Ryan.
More David? Come on up. You got to shake everybody's hand, even though we already know.
Welcome on board.
All right, thank you.
Welcome. Glad to have you.
Glad to have you.
Morning, David. How are you? Welcome.
Somebody else to yell at, right, Ralph?
Engineers within reach.
That's right.
Let's see. Our next item is a Sunshine Week proclamation. And start, whereas James Madison, the father of our federal Constitution, wrote that consent of the governed requires that the people be able to arm themselves with the power which knowledge gives, and whereas every citizen in our participatory democracy has an inherent right of access to government meetings and public records, and whereas an open and accessible government is vital to establishing and maintaining the people's trust and confidence in their government and in the government's ability to effectively serve its citizens, and whereas the protection of every person's right of access to public records and government meetings is a high priority for the town of Nags Head, and whereas the town of Nags Head is committed to openness and transparency in all aspects of its operations and seeks to set a standard in this regard, and now, therefore, the town of Nags Head commits during Sunshine Week, March 10 through 16, and throughout the year 2013, to work diligently to enhance the public's access to government records and information, to increase information provided electronically and online, and to ensure that all meetings of deliberative bodies under its jurisdiction and their committees are fully noticed and open to the public. This, the 6th day of March 2013. I'm going to make that as a motion for approval for the board.
Second?
We have a second. Is there further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. I will also make a note that the town manager and I will be going to Nags Head Elementary School during Sunshine Week to speak to the elementary school students about the importance of open government.
Can I ask a question? What grades are you talking to about open government?
I didn't set this one up, actually. We're catching them young, Doug.
I went over there for you last week to read to the, I was always impressed when Renee used to go over there and read to the kindergarten or to the elementary school, but I thought about this thing on open government and exactly what classes you were going to speak to that.
I don't think it's quite the same grades that we were reading Dr. Seuss to.
I think probably, that should be up around the 5th grade level, I would think.
Yes, sir. We'll make sure it is.
Yeah.
I'd say our next item is the consent agenda with item number 4 removed.
Motion to approve as presented with that exception.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Motion passes unanimously. And public hearings. We have a public hearing to consider adoption of a zoning ordinance text amendment request submitted by Antonio McBroom on behalf of Ben and Jerry's Primo Partners to amend Town Code Section 48-372 to permit ice cream vending stands as an accessory use to retail shopping centers. Ms. Teague?
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. So the public hearing is open now, and I'm the first speaker. Thank you, everyone. Mr. Mayor and Board of Commissioners, on your agenda, you'll see a motion for a text amendment from Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream. This is to amend Town Code Section 48-372, and it's in regards to outdoor stands. There's 2 parts to this text amendment. The first part is to allow ice cream as one of the enumerated uses in the list of allowable vending carts. The second part is to allow more than one stand as an accessory use to a shopping center. In discussion at the Planning Board, I will note that the Planning Board determined that for the additional cart, it's probably most appropriate to relegate that to larger shopping centers only. So you'll see that the Planning Board actually, at their meeting, added a suggestion, a recommendation to the text amendment to allow the second cart only with shopping centers that have more than 100 spaces. I'm open to questions, and also we have Mr. Antonio McBroom here from Ben & Jerry's, as well as representatives from the Tanger Outlet Mall. And I see that Mr. Murphy is here from the Planning Board as well.
Any questions for Ms. Teague? Ben, no, we do usually look to you to run the public hearing stuff. Sorry.
It's okay, Mr. Mayor. I'll be glad to expand upon Ms. Teague's opening of the public hearing and if there's anyone else who would like to speak as a member of public to this ordinance amendment regarding ice cream vendors, if you could approach the podium and state your name and address and speak to the board.
Hello, my name is Antonio McBroom. My address is 1040 NC Highway 902 back in Pittsboro, North Carolina. I'm a franchisee of Ben & Jerry's. Along with me is my assistant manager, Ellen Henderson.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ellen Henderson. My address is 201 Howell Street in Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
So we're here to talk about the exciting opportunity of Ben & Jerry's embarking in the Outer Banks. The Outer Banks, North Carolina, is the only region where our corporation has an interest in developing in North Carolina. So with an existing partnership that we have with Tanger Outlet Centers, we currently do a seasonal operation in the Mebane, North Carolina Center. We saw this as a great entry point into the Outer Banks region. I'm open to any questions about proposals that we've submitted and about our operation at this time.
Does anyone have any questions from the board?
I've got a question. Do y'all see any effect on bricks and mortar stores when y'all come in with a cart? Is there an effect on existing ice cream stores?
Mr. Mayor, that's a really great question. So what we found with the carts that we do, like at Tanger, is that these are really capitalizing on impulse purchases. So we've actually got situations where we have a Ben & Jerry's brick and mortar store in a Tanger outlet, and we fight hard to get a cart in that same outlet because it's additional increased revenue for that particular Ben & Jerry's. The same is true with competitors in the outlet and in surrounding areas. There's really very limited taken from the overall revenue in category.
How many locations did you say you have in North Carolina?
We have the location on Franklin Street in Chapel Hill, and we also have the location at the Mebane Tanger Outlet Center. And further, there are locations in Durham, Raleigh, Ocean Isle, and Charlotte.
And do all of these locations have freestanding or just carts?
It's a combination of the two. It's a combination of the two. Mostly freestanding. We have two what we call off-premise locations in carts, one at the Tanger and Mebane, and there's one in Charlotte as well.
And the one in Charlotte, is it a shopping center?
I think he does it in downtown Charlotte mostly.
So it's a street vendor, or is it a fixed location?
For a season, he's there every day. He has an agreement with the city where it's more of a fixture during that season.
All right, thank you.
Any further questions of the board?
Have you found, again, getting back to the brick and mortar versus the street vendor situation, have you found and of course I certainly understand that it's an impulse buy. I mean, who doesn't go by an ice cream stand and, you know, pick up a little something? I understand that. However, the issue about having an obligation, you're talking about a seasonal operation that comes in here and basically might not in a huge way, but even on a small way, impact the local businesses that sell ice cream. Have you given any thought to putting something in there, a brick and mortar there in that mall? Have you talked to their operation about that?
Yes, sir. That would be really, really ideal. The thing with the Tanger Outlet Center, and Mrs. Deborah can speak more on this, is, you know, that's one of the Tanger Outlet Centers that performs the best. It has some of the highest sales per square foot, and retail space is very, very, very in demand. We're not able to currently lease a location, full-blown location there at the Tanger Outlet Center. So I was just in Vermont. We were talking about other possible locations here in this region. Corporate likes the Corolla Duck area a lot. We just haven't found a location where we're 100% certain to do a full-blown ice cream shop. That is what the hope is, and that is what we're looking for.
Any further questions from the board?
No, I have one for staff.
Thank you very much.
I think Ellen has a few comments.
I just wanted to let you guys know I've actually been with Antonio for the past 3 years, and I've been with Ben & Jerry's for 6 years. I've worked at shops in the Charlotte area as well, in Chapel Hill in the Triangle area. And I just wanted to let you guys know that personally, I believe Ben & Jerry's as a brand definitely has a lot to offer to the community. One thing that we've discussed, I do a lot in terms of community outreach for our shop in Chapel Hill, and we've discussed the possibility of trying to continue that here in Nags Head as well, and really integrate ourselves as part of the community for the time that we're here. And there's actually been an inquiry already about doing a benefit night at our Chapel Hill location for someone doing a charity bike ride from starting in Nags Head going all the way to California. And that's something that we would definitely look into doing here at our stand location, is benefits or just working with the local community to give back and just really be a part of that. And I've also got, in terms of just kind of giving you guys an idea of what this might look like, I understand that there can definitely be some concerns in terms of bringing in a cart and it looking a little bit tacky and out of place in terms of having this really nice center that everything is very brick and mortar and put together. But I have a little display to kind of compare and contrast two looks for you guys, if you would like to see that.
Is that very site-specific?
I think you're not considering whether or not it's a site that is getting a permit now, but I believe that seeing what it may look like or what similar sites may look like is within your realm of consideration at a legislative hearing.
So the first picture is generally what a typical cart setup might look like. We definitely strive to, while being visible to the public, we also try to maintain an organic feel with the surroundings. Here in Nags Head, it would look a little different. There is a kind of a vending shed there, and we would be located at that, so it would even be less imposing. And the bottom picture is just an example of, I think, what we're definitely trying to avoid in our setup here. We don't want to be loud and out there, and I think we don't want to pull people off the side of the road coming in here. We really want to just target customers that are already in the shopping center and just trying to keep them there longer so that they can continue to shop and continue to keep the money here in town. And do you have any questions for me as a staff person who's worked with Ben & Jerry's for a while and worked with Antonio for a while?
So the top one is what y'all would look like, and the bottom one is not.
Yes.
That's what someone else could look like.
Any further questions from the board? Thank you. Anyone else from the public that would like to speak to this ordinance amendment?
And then the planning board, perhaps, if they had.
Hello, good morning. I'm Debbie Moore. I'm the general manager at Tanger Outlet Center. I live at 8124 Old Oregon Inlet Road in Nags Head. And I'm here today to show my support for Ben & Jerry's in our center. I do believe that it's something that would enhance the shopping experience while the customers are there and keep them there longer. If they leave the property, it's very little chance that they are going to come back, especially on a summer day when the parking lot's full, and to find another parking spot. And if since it's ice cream with their children, if they can just give them an ice cream cone, keep on shopping, then I think it will keep them there longer. We do have an icon, a wooden icon that's in our open deck area, and right now it houses two Coke machines. We would take the Coke machines out and put their cart in there so that it would just be a part of our food court, what we call our little food court area. Most Tanger centers do have food courts. We are restricted here with the space, and so this would be a sort of our little mini version of a food court that would that the customers could have food while they're there. We do have a tropical smoothie that's opening, so we will have a food place in there soon, and we have a hot dog cart that comes out there, and everybody would have to be located where we directed them to be located. They couldn't just come and set up anywhere they felt like. So I feel like this would, in addition to enhancing the shopping experience in the long run, it would keep more money here in Nags Head rather than taking it and going somewhere else and spending it. So, do you have any questions?
So you feel the benefit would be that the experience of them shopping, they'd shop longer,
Yes,
which
sir.
in turn spends more money, which in turn gives revenue for the town. I can live with that. The issue that I have is the brick and mortar type of operation that the people have, they come here, they put back into the community by actually, doing a business here.
Mhm.
I'm not saying Ben & Jerry's is a great product, they're in another company, it's good, but just for the sake of me finding out for my own edification, the benefit of having Ben & Jerry's there to you is exactly what I said, or is there any other benefit?
Well, I think that's the benefit, and I don't think that we're going to be, I don't think people, if they want ice cream, I think they're going to go to an ice cream parlor because that's their destination. I don't think Tanger's going to be an ice cream destination. I just think that that's going to be something else that our center can offer the shoppers while they're there. So it's just another thing that when people are shopping, if they've got the screaming kid, give them ice cream and keep going. So that's the way we're approaching it.
I look at it on behalf of what benefit it is to the town.
Mm-hmm.
What is the benefit to us if we do that?
It's revenue is probably would be the most beneficial thing for the town, I'd say.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Any further questions of the board? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public that would like to speak? Planning board? Like to say anything?
I think the planning board had many of the same concerns that particularly Commissioner Romali has. We didn't want carts competing with our brick and mortar stores. And so I think we put enough restrictions in the ordinance to keep that from happening, in that we limited these carts to only the larger shopping centers where a stand such as this would encourage shoppers to stay in that shopping center longer, and really not for it to be a final destination for an ice cream shop. So we had a lot of the same concerns that you did, and hopefully we put enough restrictions into the ordinance that we would minimize that concern. So, are there any questions from any other Board of Commissioner members? Yes.
I have one. Do we know the number of shopping centers this would impact?
We have it, and Elizabeth just gave it to me, and I haven't had time to interpret it. But it was very limited to, like, it looks like probably 4 that would qualify, and that's out of
Tanger, the mall, 10 and a half.
about 13 shopping centers that we have. Only about 4 would qualify. So that was what we were looking at.
I appreciate the hard work that you put into this, as usual. And I'm not trying to make anything more restrictive than all the restrictions that we have, now anyway. But you do feel, or you all have felt, you feel comfortable with what you have put in this to, where it won't overrun us, that we won't be bogged down and.
We don't want 2 or more of these carts in every shopping center, and right now we're pretty well limited to 1, except for the major shopping centers, and that would be with the correct parking restrictions and everything would allow no more than 2 in there.
Thanks, sir. It makes me feel better.
No.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes, ma'am.
This has come up with 2. What happens when the 3rd one comes in and applies to the staff and the planning board?
I think we would have to evaluate that personally. I think we've gone about as far as we can go. without having the proliferation of carts all over the town. And, you know, this does add somewhat to the beach experience. That was the other consideration that we had, that while you're out there shopping and in the mall, you can pick up an ice cream cone, and some of us, while we're sitting there waiting for somebody else to shop, will have an ice cream.
I don't disagree with that at all. I would have a question that would follow up on Susie. Susie asked how many. Staff listed some in their memo, but I don't think it was complete.
I'm happy to jump in here. You'll see up there, we actually, I did in preparation for the meeting, a scan using aerial photography of the number of parking spaces we have for all our shopping centers. There's a margin of error here because I was trying to use the most up-to-date aerial photography. But right now, Satterfield Landing, 10.5 shops. Let's see, I think I gave you mine. 10.5 shops, Pirates Key, Surfside Plaza, the Croatan Center, the mall, and Tanger Outlets are the ones that have more than 100 spaces. So you can see that these larger, it opens the door for these larger centers to have one additional vending cart at their location.
The other question I have for Elizabeth, did anybody from staff talk to the tenants in any of these places to get their feedback?
No, ma'am, but we did have Debbie Moore involved in the conversation. We've had extensive conversations with her.
And I don't see an issue because Debbie doesn't have food, but I'm talking about, did you talk to any of the tenants where that are in shopping centers that already have food and ice cream and so forth?
No, we did not. You mean at Tanger?
No,
we did not.
I'm not
'Cause there's
limiting.
one
I'm
there.
not limiting it to a site specific.
Oh.
I'm asking if you talk to other places on this list where tenants have food and serve ice cream. Did you talk to any of them? I understand Tanger doesn't have.
Right.
I get it. I think Tanger's probably smart with what they're doing, but I think there are other areas of town that you've got listed up here as an example.
Right. We did not, but I will point out that in allowing opening the door for an additional cart, we're not overstepping the property manager's right to manage their property. In other words, we're not going to permit anything that the property manager doesn't allow. So to me, it's a matter of property management as to what site goes where, what vendor would go where. So it would be up to the individual property manager, and I would hope that they would be in touch with their existing tenants before they brought in competition.
You haven't been here long enough to see what property managers do to existing businesses.
Well, I have a question, and I guess it goes to Elizabeth, but let's say that this issue came up in another property.
Yes.
I would think that when they come apply when they come do the paperwork and apply for their ability to sell there, that in that process, part of your overall process is, again, like you talk to the manager of that facility and find out whether or not these people are in favor of it, correct?
Correct. These are private properties.
Right.
So obviously, the owner of the property or the management company are the ones that have to be on the permit.
And they would, yes. And so therefore, the issue about the manager of the property not having to come back before us, it would already be taken care of in the original paperwork.
Right. They would be involved. We wouldn't be sidestepping any chain of command within a property. The one thing I would also note is that the existing vending carts that we have now, as would the additional carts that are being proposed and the ice cream cart as an enumerated use, would still have to comply with the existing rules that are in place. That is the section that limits them to 150 square feet, limits their signage, lays out at least 3 parking spaces that are required at a minimum. And so those rules that are applying now would not change. Again, the only thing that this text amendment would do would be to add ice cream stores, ice cream vendors to the list of enumerated vendors, which is coffee, fudge, Italian ice, hot dogs, and now this would be ice cream, so that was one piece. And the produce stand, but that also has its own set of rules. And then the second cart, and with the planning board's suggestion, just limiting that to the larger shopping centers.
I have a question for Mr.
Yeah.
Edwards.
Yep.
Mr. Edwards, I appreciate the fact that y'all looked at the larger shopping centers, and I certainly understand what Tanger's trying to do. They're a unique situation because they don't have all the different food vendors.
No.
Did y'all have any discussion about perhaps limiting it to the larger shopping centers that don't have food vendors, or don't only have one food vendor? Which right now Tanger doesn't have one at all. They're looking at one. But did y'all look at something like that in order to cut down on hurting fixed structures?
I think we discussed that briefly, and basically with the right for a cart vendor to be in the shopping center is at the discretion of the property manager.
I agree.
We thought that was enough of a restriction there in these shopping centers that already had food services in them. So no, we didn't go down that trail very far.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the board? Thank you, Mr. Edwards.
Good morning, Commissioners. As you all know, I sit on the planning board, and I too had the same concern that Commissioner Romali brought up. The question, and the reason I came up to speak about that is that my main impetus is not having seasonal people that come in and cherry pick and then leave, but they're not brick and mortar, people that are tied to the community that, has a major impact. And so I asked the question, is this a test market thing that you bring in a push cart, and sell, and then evaluate whether or not there's a need and a place for actually leasing a brick and mortar store? And so you may want to address that with them. They answered during our planning board meeting that yes, that was their intention. They wanted to evaluate the market, and so we felt, I felt personally that that was an important issue, to the way we voted. So, thank you.
Anything else from the board? Any questions there? Anyone else in the public wishing to speak? You could raise your hand so that I can see you. Not seeing anyone. Mr. Mayor, I'll close the public hearing and hand it back to you for council action and decision.
Thank you very much, sir. Anybody care to take the first crack at it?
I want to hear from the manager. He put in a recommendation. I believe there was discussion that he would start issuing recommendations, and I believe he issued one.
Well, he's been issuing recommendations, so he's welcome to speak before that discussion.
This is a different,
A new
to
day.
me, this is part of
This is a new
staff
day.
recommendation.
I recommend that you deny the request based on the original, all the discussion that's been held, that you were very reluctant in the beginning to do this. You felt like it was putting the camel's nose under the tent. You discussed at that time that it was a direction that you weren't, steps that you weren't willing, you were very apprehensive to take, and I think it could end you up somewhere where you don't want to be. However, at the beginning of my recommendation, I do think it's something that is deserving of your consideration. I do think that if you do allow it, you're allowing it at 5, you are permitting it at 5 locations that require the property manager's agreement in order to do it. So you are not putting 5 vendors in 5 locations. You are allowing the property manager to make that decision. You have a property manager here who feels like it would benefit her. And I also think that being business friendly, we need to consider what the property managers need to help sustain the businesses, the long-term brick and mortar businesses that are existing in those locations. But it's my job to remind the board that the sentiment that you had when this came before you was that it wasn't, you were very apprehensive, very reluctant, as Commissioner Cahoon said. What happens with one, then it's two, then it's three. There's ways to allow a third one where it only affects 4 or 5. But based on the board's philosophy at the time, I'm recommending that denial of this application.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the manager?
I was originally, after reading the background and reading what the intention was here, I'm changing my position here, and again, I think that they've done a good job in putting the proposal forward. I want to know, first of all, who this is going to hurt. I don't want to hurt. I definitely don't want to hurt the people that have a brick and mortar business that are here. I mean, these people are embedded in the community, and I think that we should help them with their businesses first, other than, I mean, before we would bring in a vendor just for the summertime to come in during the season and sell the wares and then leave, because, well, there's a couple reasons. I mean, we're certainly we will get some more tax revenue based on if in fact that keeps people there longer to purchase items in the mall. But you know, I don't really believe now that after seeing this that this issue would hurt another business. But again, this is a part-time operation. I would much rather see Ben & Jerry's come in and open up a site-specific store in the area. I mean, I'd like to see it in Nags Head, but even if it's not, I'd much rather see a brick-and-mortar type operation than I would a vendor. But I can tell you, I could probably, you know, with a little bit more information, I could probably live with this ordinance.
My feelings are very similar. I don't think we're talking about 3 or 4 vending carts at this point. We're talking about 2 in our larger shopping centers. And while it may not be a brick and mortar building, there are brick and mortar buildings that aren't open 12 months a year. Some items are just more seasonal, whether it's a produce stand, whether it's ice cream. You just have better times of the year where those items are more sellable. I also think that regarding the size of the shopping centers, I don't think we're overstepping the bounds of the property manager in allowing it. I also don't think that we can say we only want one ice cream store in this shopping center or one clothing store in this shopping center or one pizza parlor so that there's never competition. I don't think that's our role. I think that's the role of the shopping center or property manager with their tenants. Do they all do a great job? No. With regards to where from the tenant perspective, I've been there and I totally understand that. But those things just kind of ultimately take care of themselves, and businesses look for a place where they can thrive. That's the natural order of business and competition. I think this would be a benefit not only to Tanger, but to perhaps other shopping centers. To add this additional cart, it may not necessarily be an ice cream cart, it may be one of the others. I think in the community, in the seasonal community we live in, we kind of have a different atmosphere, and I don't think this adds to a carnival type. I just think it adds to a benefit to the consumer, or a potential benefit to the consumer, particularly if you're out shopping and My husband doesn't like to go into clothing stores with me typically, but he would sit down and have an ice cream cone, so, and be happy. So I think it really adds to the overall Outer Banks experience, and I don't think the potential of 5 carts is doing significant damage to our community, and I think we do want to be more business friendly. We've talked about that. We've taken many steps toward that end. So for those reasons, I would support this.
I think this proposal as presented by Tanger is a great proposal. I could see that they actually could use something like this. And I think there's probably a couple other sites. The one that I don't see, and problem I have is I don't want to be site-specific, but I could see where in a couple other cases it wouldn't be so good, where it would hurt bricks and mortar, and we sit here and struggle with empty stores fronts all the time, and I hate to think that that might impact that. And with the conversations I had with people at one of the shops that were not listed on here but are listed up there, they were surprised and pretty appalled that nobody talked to them, actually. But I would endorse this with some modifications, such as limiting the number of, don't put it where you've got tons of food facilities already, but put it where you don't, like at Tanger. I mean, those are areas that you could use some enhanced business and enhanced things. But I don't think it necessarily needs to fit every place out there. So I'd like to see it come back with a modification that would allow it at, there are several of the places that were listed that don't have a lot of food establishments. There's one that has a hot dog place and a seafood place, but don't have a lot of restaurant facilities that offer the same things that this does. And speaking as a small business person, I think that property managers are looking at the bottom dollar. They don't really care about the individual tenants because they figure they'll come and go. That they can get somebody in, perhaps, that won't sell food. So I'd like to take a look at this with modifications and think about it holistically, long-term.
One of my fond childhood memories is the ice cream truck coming around and the bell ringing, and I mean, you can see the kids just swarm on it. We don't have those here. When I look at Mayor Pro Tem Romali's question about what benefit does it bring, I switch that question around and say, what harm does this bring? And I think food carts are a different experience than a restaurant experience. It's getting a hot dog from the cart is not the same as going out to dinner at Owen's. Same thing with ice cream, I believe. It's a different niche. It adds to that breadth of experiences that you can have on the Outer Banks. And I think it could be an introduction for some businesses to see, okay, is this a market that we want to be in? And it's a good way to test the waters. I strongly believe that we should set the environment. Government sets the environment, but we shouldn't really be involved in determining what competition goes on out there. And Commissioner Walters brought in an editorial from this morning's paper, the Virginian Pilot, but it's talking about food trucks have been in the news a lot, and this one is about food trucks in downtown Norfolk. I'll quote from it, but other than regulations for health and safety, the city should permit food trucks to operate. It should encourage food trucks to operate like any other business. Setting up restrictions that prohibit food trucks means the city chooses to promote one kind of food business over another. And closes with, that choice should be left to hungry people. And there are going to be people that want to eat their lunch at hot dog carts, and there are going to be people that want to get their dessert at ice cream carts. And as long as the health and safety regs are being met, I don't see that that is the local government's business to regulate that. I think we're putting it with the shopping center owners, which is where it belongs. It's in their long-term interest to keep their tenants happy. And if they've got food tenants, they're going to try and keep those folks. In the long term, it is about dollars, but I think most property managers have a little bit longer-term view of those dollars than a shorter-term view of it. Yeah, you can get a food cart in, but it doesn't generate the same revenue as a bricks-and-mortar restaurant. And it is a decision that I think should be on the private sector, the property owners and the property managers. So I would support it as it is. And I'll make a motion to that effect, that we approve it with the planning board modifications, making it for larger sites. The site must have 100 or more existing parking spaces.
I'll second that.
We've got a motion on the floor. We've got a second. It's for the planning board recommended ordinance. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign.
Nay.
Nay.
The motion fails 2-2. Would anybody care to make another motion?
Go ahead, Renee.
I'm going to make a motion that staff rework this and bring it back with a limitation as to food carts in the same parameters, but limit it with the number of eating facilities in there. Do a little bit more homework, talk to the people, and bring it back.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Regarding your motion?
I'll be glad to withdraw
Am I out
it.
of order? Or do
We
you
probably need
wait
a
for a
second
second?
before.
Okay.
We got a second, now discussion.
Okay. My question is, if it's based on the number of existing food establishments in a shopping center, that can change over time. I mean, a food establishment that's there today may not be there next year. So then that changes the entire ordinance. I think.
Actually, no, then it would mean that food carts could go in because there, more things could go in because there wouldn't be as many food establishments.
Okay.
That could change it that way.
I think the local government trying to manage the mix of tenants in a shopping center is
I don't
not where we wanna be.
disagree with that either. And I think.
I'd just like some better refinement.
I
I'd be glad to withdraw my
can't
motion.
speak for Commissioner Cahoon, but I do observe all of us not being in favor to hurt any organization that's already here, particularly a brick and mortar type operation that pays more taxes than an operation of a cart. However, like I said before, I don't have a problem with that. And like you said, Mayor, we are a resort area. You know, we are a vacation resort area type of, and the ice cream cart is a good fit. And I don't think there's any question about that. All I want to do is make sure that we put a little bit more effort into making sure that it's not hurting already established businesses. And if they don't have a problem with it, I don't have a problem with it.
I'd withdraw my motion and let the other just die on the floor right now.
May I ask one more question? Prior
We're still in
to
discussion.
your withdrawal? Can we see the slide again with the number of parking spaces? Are the concerns, would they be lessened if you changed it from 100 or more existing parking spaces to, let's say, 250 parking spaces or 300 parking spaces?
No,
or-
mine has nothing to do with number. I applaud the planning board for what they did with their parking spaces.
Well, it changes the size of the shopping center,
Right.
which, with the larger the shopping center, the more businesses you have, the smaller shopping center, the greater the impact, I would say. So, just a thought.
Just looking at some of the smaller shopping centers, they don't have food at all. I mean, I look at the hot dog stand up there at
Central Square.
Central Square, and I didn't even see, unless I'm mistaken, I didn't even see Central Square up there on the list.
I think they call it Antique Mall.
Oh, they do? Okay. I didn't know what antique, I didn't know what Antique Mall was. Central Square, I thought was the name of the.
Then I'm sorry.
It will require a full.
Requires 4/5, right?
It will. That's correct, Ben.
It's gonna, yeah, you're gonna have to have unanimous 4-0 vote to pass it today.
It's moot then.
I mean, I'll be glad to withdraw my motion, have staff look at and discuss it with the planning board and bring something back.
I withdraw my second.
Okay.
Therefore, so
What
therefore you
kind
go
of
back-
direction are we giving the planning board, I
go
guess,
back-
and the staff?
Can I just,
Excuse me, it's gonna fail due to lack of a 4/5 vote. In the meantime, before we, which is, we'll come back again. This will come back again, I would imagine this will come back again at the next meeting.
I mean,
Or-
it has failed completely at this point, because we had 2-2. Now, a 3-1, it would come back, and it would get voted on, and would not have to, you'd have to have a second reading, but you wouldn't have to have a 4-0 vote. It's zoning text, so.
But since it failed 2-2, nobody.
Did I explain that correctly?
There's nothing in your rules that explains how you bring it back or don't bring it back. And I've looked this morning because I thought that that might end up being an issue. And it just says that you can't pass it on a second reading, which is the same, on the first reading without a certain vote, which is the same as the statute. 2-2 vote to pass that failed leaves you with the status quo. There hasn't been a vote to deny the ordinance amendment, so I would err on the side of bringing it back and allowing a vote in the future rather than not, since this is an applicant-driven process where they have paid a fee and asked for a public hearing and a vote up or down on the ordinance. So I would err on the side of reconsidering it later
Well,
at another meeting.
2-2, like you said, Counselor, 2-2, what lost 2-2 was move to approve. It doesn't, was no motion to disapprove it.
Correct.
So therefore, if the applicant is going to bring it back, which I would think that they would, that'll give us the opportunity to, if nothing else, listen to any concerns, further concerns from people that had concerns originally, if there are any, besides me.
Yes, sir.
Is there any direction that we want to give to staff and planning board to change this ordinance to make it
is it, may I
something that
offer
will
a
pass? Please.
something that Mr. Murphy said that I think you may have been offering as a suggestion, and I'm not sure that this is permissible, but the applicant has noted that they would like to be here full-time. And they were going to, part of what they were going to do with this summer's use was to see whether or not they can convince their corporate higher-ups that this is a viable, long-term, sustainable opportunity for them. Can we give them that, if that year, that if they make it, they come back and find an empty storefront? If they don't, they're not coming back anyway.
Can we sunshine 2 carts?
We can, y'all. I mean, we can do, not whatever we want, but we can sure modify ordinances to a certain extent. Is there?
Are you
Is there
asking
board
that it only be limited to Tanger?
I'm just offering that as a,
I don't believe you could limit it in name.
I
You
don't
would
think
have
you
to.
could either.
You would have to use objective criteria that somehow.
use the same
Limited.
100 parking spaces.
You could limit it to a shopping center that currently doesn't have a food vendor.
Well, that wouldn't help the applicant.
Yes, it would, because they don't have, they have a,
Hot dog vendor.
they have a fixed.
Ms. T?
Excuse me, the applicant has asked for consideration that perhaps you don't adopt the second cart per site part of their text amendment, but would you consider at least adding ice cream sales to the enumerated listed vending carts in the ordinance? That way, should the hot dog stand fall through for whatever reason, then Tanger could actually bring them back in. That's just a slight change, but it removes the second vending cart, which seems to be of the most concern.
I have no problem with that.
I don't have a problem with that. We allow 1 per site. My only thing was, I was trying to just figure out how to get it in areas that didn't have food vendors.
Ice cream through the one vendor.
What we're doing,
Because Satterfield Landing doesn't.
Still have one vendor, but they can choose if it's ice cream.
Now there's 1 vendor, but ice cream isn't accepted vendor.
Mayor Pro Tem?
that's fine.
Anybody care to make that as a motion?
I'll make a motion to add ice cream.
I'll
as a use.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. It's to add ice cream to the list of allowed products throughout the ordinance. It does not include a second cart. Everybody clear on the motion? Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. The motion passes unanimously.
May I
Why
ask-
didn't y'all do it the first time?
May I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it possible to add the use of a second cart with a sunshine clause as a one-year trial? Is that possible?
Sure.
It is. My general preference in the past has been to avoid sunshine clauses.
Sunset, right?
Sunset
Sunset,
clauses.
sorry.
Sunshine.
Sunset, we
Sunshine Week.
Sunset clause, sorry.
We have done that in the past, though.
There's been such a lack
that.
of sunshine lately in terms of outside. I'm looking forward to the spring and summertime, but it's always been my preference to avoid that because it seems to me to be better to come back and actually be reconsidered and repealed if necessary, because sunset clauses, someone has to keep up with whether or not they apply, and there are things that remain in your ordinance. The language doesn't disappear, and it makes it complicated to consider in the future rather than a repeal, which would strike the material from the ordinance. But it is legal to do it.
And I think staff can track this
Yeah.
with the discussion we've had today. I can promise you we will track this.
So you could make something that sunset at the end of 2013? Is that?
For all the shopping centers that are there.
For five, based on the size and based on the planning board recommendation, but allow the second cart to sunset at the end of 2013.
So in effect, you want to
Adopt the
move to
ordinance.
adopt the planning board recommended ordinance with a sunset clause for 2000.
December 31st.
And in that time, could there be changes with further staff and planning board discussion that you adopt it in January with other provisions based on the ups and downs of this second cart?
You won't know that till after the season, what your ups
Right,
and
but I
downs
mean,
are.
when it comes time to determine whether or not to extend it or drop it, you can adopt it as part of an ordinance with those changes.
And you can take into account the experience that
Exactly.
we had over the summertime.
I would like to say, with, we don't always agree with the planning board, but I got to, once again, thank the planning board for this type of issue, because I know this is really difficult. This is another one that's difficult, but we aren't always in line, and we aren't always supportive, but this is just proof to me that you all work really hard at this kind of stuff. My hat's off to you. Like I said at the beginning of this thing, I was against it. Now I've changed my mind based on you all's recommendations.
Put the parking back up there, please, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Counselor, while we're looking, the sunset law, we've done that before here. And I understand that you don't, as the person that guides us through the ins and outs of law, aren't really in favor of it. But in this particular case, or in these particular cases, this might be the way to deal with this particular issue. We've done it before, and we can do it again. And like the manager said, somebody's going to keep track of it.
Fortunately, that's not us. But,
That's not, yeah.
And it's already March. If somebody's planning something for this season, the time is now, so.
Are there further parking modifications that we'd want to do with that, or? Right now, the parking was 100 spaces, right?
I'm not recommending any changes to what was presented.
Do you need a motion?
We would need a motion.
I would like to make a motion that we add, well, we've already added the ice cream cart, but that we add a second cart with the same provisions as the planning board recommendation, with a sunset clause to expire on December 31st,
Of 2013.
2013.
We have a motion on the floor. I'll second that motion for purposes of discussion. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign.
Nay.
The motion passes 3-1. So that one will require a second reading at the April board meeting.
Correct.
Okay. Good. Next item?
Renee?
Sorry, yes, ma'am.
I want to clarify, the no vote was not against the proposal for Tanger. It was because it included all the other bricks and mortar businesses that I think would be impacted.
And I agree with that, Commissioner Kuhn. However, I still feel that management of those particular places would come here either opposed to or in favor of, so.
If they'd have known about it, maybe.
Yeah, if they
they
had.
would.
And I would like to say one more thing, Mayor, before we move on to the next. And this is me speaking, please pass on to corporate, the issue about brick and mortar versus, we don't have an issue with the carts. It's just that we would like to see an obligation on behalf of Ben and Jerry's to come to hopefully Nags Head or some other town and establish a business here. Thank you.
They're here in Vermont, I think. They're listening in Vermont.
Yeah.
Now, thank you for coming. Our next item is new business, committee reports. Mayor Pro Tem?
Mr. Mayor, I would, we did have a GovEd committee meeting, which I talked about at the last meeting. We have not, the budget has not been forwarded to us for presentation, so therefore I would like to push my report back to the May meeting, April meeting, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Walters?
Nothing to report.
Mr. Coon?
Not a thing.
My goodness. We're trying to set records this morning. Our next item is request to amend the Village at Nags Head stormwater plan. Mr. Ryan and Ms. Teague.
Good morning again. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a request from Saga Construction to amend the stormwater plan for the Village of Nags Head. This has to do with making improvements to the ditch that runs parallel to NC 12 and adjacent to the Moongate subdivision property. The proposal in your packet, you'll see, contains a drawing that offers to make some changes to the ditch as well as to the culvert pipe that goes under the road just to the north. And I believe Michael Robinson, the design engineer, is here to present his plan to you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Ms. Teague?
Question. Says that applicant has indicated that NCDOT will operate and maintain the system. Do we have that in writing with an agreement from DOT?
Not yet. He's been in touch with DOT, and I'll let Mr. Robinson further explain his communications with them.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Mike Robinson. I prepared this plan and here to discuss it. Can you put up the site plan? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, not the as-built, the, plan sheet one, that'd be correct. Essentially what we want to do is fill in the ditch along the Moongate subdivision. We have been working on this plan for quite some time. We've had numerous iterations. We've had a lot of input from the town. And I think we've come up with a pretty good plan. The drainage system as it currently exists, starting from the north, is an open ditch through a couple culverts and there is a 15-inch culvert under the north entrance to this property. That's the north access entrance. Then it's an open ditch from there down to Mall Drive, where it enters a 18-inch culvert. I believe that's 18. I'm sorry, it's 24-inch culvert. And it's culverted from there all the way down to Town Hall, where it enters the open ditch system that runs west, crosses the highway, and then enters the drainage system within the golf course. So what we propose to do is, starting with the north entrance, we are going to remove the existing, it's either a 15 or 16, it's kind of a mashed down culvert. We're going to remove that culvert and install two 24-inch solid HDPE pipes. And one of the benefits of this portion of the project is we're able to gain about 8 inches of additional elevation drop with the installation of this culvert. The north side of that existing culvert is quite high. We can drop this down. What that does is that allows additional fall from this point north to Seven Sisters, which the town can then take advantage of to make some drainage improvements from there down. After we install the 24-inch pipes, these are going to be solid pipes. We're going to install a catch basin. That's a graded storm drain catch basin. And then we're going to enter two 36-inch perforated drainage pipes. These are pipes that have holes in them. They're wrapped in a fabric sock. The reason for that is we had two criteria. Well, actually several criteria, but we wanted to match the storage volume in the existing ditch with what we were filling in as far as with the culvert areas. The other thing we obviously have to go to perforated pipe because we're trying to maintain the groundwater lowering benefits of an open ditch. Then we ran all the hydraulics from looking at how much water this thing will carry. So then we installed dual 24-inch culverts. We set another catch basin about mid-property. That's going to pick up a drainage pipe that leads from the Moongate project. And we come out of that with dual 24 or 36-inch perforated pipes to another catch basin at Mall Drive. And that's kind of where we run into, our tailwater condition, because at that point we enter an existing 24-inch culvert system. That point is where, we can do what we can upstream. Once we enter that, then that's basically all we have to work with from that point south. We've run several iterations of hydraulic calculations. This is obviously a more efficient system to convey the stormwater. We're matching the open storage of the existing ditch section. We're also going to have a swale over top of these drop inlets. So with the drop inlet sticking up a few inches above the swale bottom. So that's actual additional conveyance and storage that we didn't even factor into this equation. So that's it in a nutshell. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Robbins?
I hate to ask you, why are we doing this?
Because the ditch is so unsightly. It's overgrown. I mean, it's an eyesore basically, and you stomp around there in the summertime, and the mosquitoes just engulf you. So.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Did you say the fall is toward the north?
No, ma'am. The fall's to the south.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And what we're doing is we're taking the dual 24-inch culverts at the north entrance. Okay. We're dropping those down. Okay. What that does is that provides additional fall from the Seven Sisters to this drainage inlet. And although it didn't start out this way, we've kind of gotten to the point where we almost see this as the cornerstone of maybe a much larger scale drainage project. I really feel like this is a good plan. We wouldn't have thrown it out if we thought there was going to be any adverse impacts. And I think it's something that the town can start from and build on to improve the drainage in the Mall Drive area.
So it sounds like you believe it'll improve the drainage upstream, and then downstream, we're kind of set with the existing things that are not in y'all's control.
Exactly. And once it enters that culverted pipe system from Mall Drive south, there's not a lot we can do. Now, one thing that will kind of enter into this is there's a difference between open channel flow and pressurized flow. Okay, so once a pipe fills up and has a headwater condition, then it takes on the flow characteristics of like a pressurized water system. Okay, so with that additional head, and that's kind of what makes this such a difficult situation to model, because you've got tailwater situations, you've got headwater situations, you've got open channel flow for part of the time, and then it becomes a pressurized water system for part of the time. But we feel like as this system fills up, pressurizes the pipe going downstream, that stream will become more efficient in conveying water. It's only going to do so much because there are tailwater conditions that during extreme periods are going to be matched. So it's not like we're going to get a dramatic benefit, but I think we'll get some benefits overall with the system. So.
Mike, you alluded to there's a bottleneck on the south side of Mall Drive. I know this is not your issue, but I know since you've studied this system that obviously what's coming from Mall Drive south to this ditch is not big enough to handle the flow.
Yeah, I think the problem is the pipe that's from Mall Drive down and it's a long run, and it runs all the way down to this ditch right out here. I think it's undersized, and there's a lot of things that I've been kicking around as far as, I even thought about maybe, and this is something, obviously the town would have to do, but you might even consider a stormwater pumping system at some point to maybe start pulling some of that water, out of there, because we're so limited in what we can do with gravity around here because we're flat and we get very high water tables, and we just don't have the topography that promotes, real stormwater runoff. So we have to rely on infiltration and storage, and then convey what we can during the drier periods. And what that does is that these open ditches or these perforated pipe systems will help lower the water table in that vicinity, providing you've got an outlet for it. And then that's just sort of reserved for the next big storm event. The colossal events, nothing's going to fix that. But we feel like any little steps we can take to, improve the situation, we can. As far as DOT, we're still working with DOT. The local board supported. I sent the plan to the DOT office in Elizabeth City. He told me he supported it, but they wanted to send it to hydrology. Okay, so they sent it up to hydrology. The comments I got back from the hydrologist were he didn't want a perforated pipe system. And I said, and I've not had a lot of contact with him since, but I think I can convince him that a perforated pipe system is obviously it's basically the only choice here. We don't have a choice. If DOT won't approve it with a perforated pipe system, then it's just not going to get done. We obviously can't put a solid pipe in here. He said that DOT typically doesn't allow perforated pipe systems, but I know for a fact they just did an enormous project in Duck that was very successful with a perforated pipe. It's actually an infiltrator pipe. So I think, particularly if I have the support of this board, I think we can get by that hurdle with the hydrologist. And I understand that we may actually have a meeting with them today. So that's where we're at with that. But at this point, we do not have DOT approval, so we're still pursuing it.
And DOT approval is one of the conditions?
It is absolutely a condition, yes.
The reason I ask that is I just don't want it to come back and all of a sudden it become our responsibility. It either has to stay with the developer or it stays with DOT. I don't want our citizens to suddenly get caught having to maintain this down the road.
Understood. And it's, from my understanding, this piece of ditch is already recognized by DOT as something that's within their maintenance realm. And the encroachment agreement is a DOT maintained encroachment agreement. Again, we've got to work out this issue with hydrology, but I think once this guy sees the situation and understands, we just cannot, it would be irresponsible to put a solid pipe in this situation. I mean, that's what's led to, I mean, that's a solid pipe from Mall Drive all the way south, and that's part of the problem, you know?
That was going to be my next question. It is solid pipe from Mall Drive south. Is there, this is a question for our staff, is there a DOT maintenance agreement on that section of pipe?
I do not know.
I understand that's not you, but
Yeah.
it's us.
My understanding, it's on private property. That pipe is on private property.
That is correct. That portion of that piping is on private property, so therefore DOT does not have maintenance responsibility for that section of pipe.
Does the homeowner then become responsible for maintaining that flow as part of their site plan? So nobody has to maintain it once we've permitted that site to be developed on private property
But
as part of the drainage system?
Isn't this in the village, though?
It is part of the village master plan, so somebody's got to be responsible
Somebody's gonna be
for it.
responsible. At least originally when Ammons Dare was here, I mean,
When that pipe was permitted, it was supposed to be on the village to maintain that pipe through there. But probably 80% of that pipe is all on private property. We did have a problem where one of the pipes failed. Driveway collapsed in, and it was the homeowner's responsibility to go ahead and fix that driveway. It wasn't ours.
So we could actually sorry, Mike, I know this is your time, not ours, but sounds like to me if it's part of the village master plan, we could contact the village and their master board could make sure that that gets done as part of their drainage master plan.
I've got a comment on that one real quick. It's not on the association's board. It was actually put on, it's a long, kind of crooked path, but it was from the development of the quay. And they agreed to take that stormwater from the quay, run it down. Seven Sisters wasn't there yet, Moongate obviously wasn't there yet, but Nags Head Village Service Company took responsibility for that stormwater all the way from the quay down to the ditch over here. The ditch, where is that ditch? Ditch over there.
Right there. Who is Nags Head Service Company?
Nags Head Village Service Company at that point was Howard.
Okay.
And then Ammons Dare Corporation bought Nags Head Village Service Company.
Okay.
Now, Ammons Dare Corporation, while they existed, had that responsibility. They dissolved as a corporation. There's nobody really left to hang that responsibility on. And they didn't give it to anybody else. And
nobody picked up on it.
And the guys that bought the sewer plant didn't buy that liability. That's my understanding of the story. So, sorry, I don't mean to.
All right, no.
no, but, and that figures.
Yeah. Yeah, it figures. I'll have another question later, but it's not germane right now about how to pay for
I
that.
have been given some documentation that dates back to the early 80s and mid-80s that basically outlines a lot of that information. I'm in the process of going through that and hopefully can provide that information to the town attorney for his interpretation on exactly who is responsible for that current maintenance.
Great.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Sorry, back to Mr. Robinson, though. Ma'am?
I have a question. So currently DOT maintains that ditch?
That's my understanding, yes.
Yes.
Or does
Yes.
not maintain it, as the
okay.
case may be.
It's their responsibility.
It's their responsibility? Okay.
Other questions for Mr. Robinson?
What do we need to do?
Well, we've got a request to amend the Village of Nags Head Stormwater Plan for Moongate there with this new drainage piece. So,
And the only thing you're asking to do is encroach into do a new drainage system, nothing else?
There's no other discussions on the table at this
Okay.
point. There were originally some discussions about encroaching into the drainage easement back there. That is not part of this application. If
Okay.
they want to bring that forward later, we'll deal with that.
Okay, good, then I can address mine this afternoon.
Well, then I'd make a motion to adopt, I guess that's what we're looking, to adopt the proposal.
Adopt the amendment. Yes, sir.
The amendment, I'm sorry, adopt the amendment, yeah.
I'll second that motion. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next item is items referred to and presentations from the town attorney. Mr. Gallup?
I don't have anything today, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Good, that was the right answer. Mr. Manager?
I don't have the same answer, and I apologize.
You never did.
I have two things, actually, and I'm going to ask David Ryan to come up, and we can continue that discussion on stormwater. He's got some reports about the hydro folks coming from DOT today, as well as updates on some of the other various projects in town.
Yes, thank you. First off, the town has been trying to get in contact with DOT to review a lot of these problems that we've seen that surfaced last summer. And got word late last evening that they're going to have a representative from their hydro group come out here today so we can look at some of these specific situations and potential solutions to them. What I'll do is I'll start from the north and move southward for these drainage projects. First off, Nags Head Pond. There was a drainage infrastructure design improvement that was prepared, and that information had been put out to bid. We received bids on that, and Parks Land Development out of Elizabeth City was the low bidder on that. I believe the bid amount was $15,750 for that improvement. And basically, what that entails is going into the existing swale network and just reestablishing those grade lines in order to go ahead and promote positive drainage out to the bypass. Secondly, Nags Head Acres. What we had discussed was providing alternate routing from what currently exists. There's a 15-inch diameter outlet pipe that currently services the southeast corner of that subdivision where they've experienced historical localized ponding there. So we've looked at multiple routing out to the bypass for that, and that's one of the key discussions that we're going to have with DOT is looking at providing not only multiple flow paths internal to the subdivision, but also externally out there at the bypass. As it stands right now, we've got 3 main drainage ways that all tie into the ocean outfalls in the northern part of town, Gallery Row, Conch Street, and Curlew. All those are isolated from each other. So one of the discussions that we would like to have with DOT is go ahead and basically connect those. So you have some connectivity. So basically, if one is overloaded, it's got another flow path to take. So that's going to be one of the discussions that we have today on the northern section is to see how we can go ahead and provide connectivity between Gallery Row and then Curlew Street. And the initial plan was to go ahead and culvert underneath Barn Street in order to go ahead and achieve that. So that's one of the discussions that we're going to have today that would also provide benefit to Nags Head Acres. Vista Colony, the pilot project that is currently under construction. As it stands right now, all of the elements to that system are currently in place. Right now, we've got about a 3 or 4 week delay until Dominion Power can get in there and provided a service connection to that system. We anticipate once that is established that the startup for that will be in the same week. So we're probably looking at the 1st of April for that system to be up and running. Old Nags Head Place and Linda Lane, That's another area that we're going to look at with the DOT hydro unit, especially there on the cul-de-sac of Linda Lane. Historically, that's because of its low-lying nature, there's been a lot of standing water within that cul-de-sac area that basically just has nowhere to go. So we've contacted DWQ to see if it was possible to go ahead and route that to the Conch Street outfall, which is just upstream of that, and their preference was no, they would rather have that go to the Curlew Street because of the fact that there's more opportunities for pollutant removal just from the distance of the conveyance from the point of concern down to that outfall. And then secondly, it's been outfitted with that filtration system. So they're looking at the water quality benefits to that. And so now the ball has been put into DOT's court as whether they will permit that, that additional flow from being introduced into their system. So that's one of the things that we're going to go ahead and discuss today.
Quick question, David.
Sure.
Is that just breaking through to the, out of that cul-de-sac to the ditch along the bypass there?
That's correct.
Okay.
May I? David, you mentioned the filtration system at Curlew. Is DOT still committed to maintaining those filters? Because at some point, those filters have to be changed. Is that correct?
I don't have the answer to you on that, but that will be something that I will get some information on today. It has been done once.
Commissioner Cahoon, those filters have been analyzed just within the past 3 or 4 months, and a large number of them were replaced with new filters. So they are monitoring them periodically, and when they have reached the end of their useful life, the way that filter box works, some of the filters get a lot more heavy usage at the head end than the ones at the far end, so they don't have to replace 100% of them at one time. They take the ones that got less use, move them up to the front, and then replace the ones that were heavily used. So they've gone through that process one time already.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and several other projects. The South Nags Head drainage study. We're looking at conducting a meeting with DOT and also Moffitt and Nickel at the end of the week to go ahead and look at that area, especially in the 8,000 block, to see what possible alternatives to a solution to that problem area would be. And then on the southern end, in the, I believe it's the 9600 and 9500 block of South Old Oregon Inlet Road, tried to meet with the hydro group to see what possible fixes that we have there with the localized flooding that's been experienced down in that area. One other drainage item I'd like to report on is the multi-use path. There was some grading and some culvert pipe alteration that was made along that length. That has all been completed. That is all in place. Right now, we've got about 90 to 95% of the curb and gutter in place, and we've got approximately 25% of the pathway that has been poured. That project, for the most part, as far as the concrete, should be completed by the end of next week, I've been told.
And the only thing I'll add is the red drum outfall. Commissioner Cahoon had a question at the last meeting about when we thought we might be on the CRC agenda for that variance to get that outfall extended, and Sterling Baker has indicated that they are trying for the April agenda, but not optimistic, so it'll probably be July before that variance gets on the calendar. But they are committed.
May not be in existence then.
The RC may not be in existence.
David, may I ask one more question?
Sure.
I noticed DOT's been redoing some of the swales in South Nags Head, and I noticed that they didn't work a lot last week, but they evidently worked a day this week or so. They went down, they installed swales, then they skipped a whole section on the east side of that, and then they started again, but they skipped one of the worst sections right there where the Whalebone Motel is, because the two houses that are oceanfront, those houses flood all the time from that road runoff where they raised it. And for whatever reason, they didn't reinstall a single swale right in that section.
I will be sure to follow up with them today when we go ahead and meet and discuss that. I was down there earlier this week, and I had noticed that they had basically skipped several areas. I do not know exactly why that was done, but that question will be asked.
Well, those poor people on the east side, and I don't know who they are, but those driveways catch every bit of the runoff just about from that road system where they raised that road 8 to 12 inches back in '03 and '04. But I was confused as to why they skipped that area, so thank you for checking on that.
Okay. And one last thing, as far as the town ditch maintenance program, I believe that's about 90 to 95% complete. There's several cross ditches that remain, but basically they've reestablished the swale grade lines, vegetation removal, and that is nearly complete.
Take us back there for a minute.
Any questions?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
David, the problem that you talked about in Nags Head Acres, and i.e. Vista Colony, because it's the drain going back out to the bypass evidently that you all were looking at, talking about changing. Has maybe the clearing of the swales in Vista Colony maybe helped that operation already? Because when it has rained hard, we haven't had the ponding that we had before.
And that could be a function of both surface water and groundwater. I think what we saw last summer was the interaction between surface water and an elevated groundwater condition. Since it's had time to go ahead and recover, that basically there's probably been more storage volume within a lot of that drainage network as a result of that groundwater condition being lowered.
Have you had those pumps? Have you had those pumps running?
No.
So it's lowered from on its own because of weather?
The break in weather has helped out tremendously.
Okay. I just, we're certainly not there yet, but the area that I'm talking about around by Ansels and all has not been an issue. And of course, we haven't had the downpours, but we've had some pretty hard rains that really surprised me that I didn't see the roads blocked.
And again, I think the key to that was, if you look at last July, not only the amount of rainfall that we had, but the number of rainfall events. I think it was, my memory serves me right, 16 days out of the 31 days in July that basically we had some kind of rainfall event. So there was no recovery time for that system. So the period between rainfall events is key to that groundwater condition being able to recover.
Thanks, sir. Huh? Yeah.
Can we go back for 1 minute to Nags Head Pond? Tell me again about Nags Head Pond, please. That was your first one, I thought.
Yes.
Okay.
Nags Head Pond basically was, the plan was to go ahead and reestablish the swale grade lines in there to promote positive drainage, basically from west to east. It encompasses the eastern half of that subdivision.
And it was a proposal to contract it out?
That's correct.
We can't do that ourselves?
No, ma'am. We don't have the equipment to be able to, with the motor grader, to be able to put the swells in there that'll be acceptable to the neighborhood and ensure we get the right amount of swell. Ralph is. But that's on the table right now, and we're kind of waiting to get these other, reluctant to say it this way, but higher, or what we've started finished before we move on to another project.
Well, there are priorities in these things. I mean,
Right. I agree.
we have to set priorities. That's part of it. And I guess the last time I was through Nags Head Pond on a hard rain, it looked like we had good drainage going from west to east. There was definitely water running through the ditch in there. I think what we've got to be cautious about is how much bang for the buck that we
That's
get.
right.
Because you can spend an awful lot of money on stormwater, and we're starting to see that, but we want to get the most benefit or the most bang for the buck. I
Sure.
guess.
And even though we've gone out, we've got bids on that, yes, we do realize that there's a priority. And I think the first priority is there at Barnes Street, looking at, like you said, the biggest bang for your buck and the impact on Vista Colony and also Nags Head Acres.
Other questions for Mr. Ryan?
Just one quick one. What's your position on pumping stormwater?
Sorry, I didn't prepare you for that.
No, I just heard them talking earlier. I had to say that. I'm not, that doesn't require an answer.
Okay.
Put you on.
That was a loaded question, so thank you.
Give him a break.
He's not that new.
Well, there's definitely pros and cons to everything.
Yeah.
And pumping is not your conventional way of addressing stormwater management. But in some certain instances, it may be the only solution that you have.
I'm looking forward to when you turn the pumps on. I really am, just see if it works.
Yes, I think there's a lot of people that are interested in Vista Colony and seeing how that's going to work.
Mayor?
Yep.
Maybe you might need to touch base with Dominion Power to see if we could get that power turned on before
Speed it
we
up a
really
little bit.
have. My concern is they're going to get behind, we're going to have all these spring rains, and we're going to have all those issues again. If we're all ready and we're only waiting for the power to be cut on, it might behoove you to.
We can make that call.
We've done everything to keep this project moving along. I've been in constant contact with Dominion Power to let them know that, yes, we're ready. They've got it scheduled, but they've got such a backlog. 3 to 4 weeks is the best timeline they could give me.
Thank you, David.
All right, thank you.
Anything else, sir?
One other thing, the lease that you authorized me to enter into at your last meeting with Community Care Clinic and Shellfish Sanitation, Community Care Clinic has signed. The two groups have worked out their space amongst themselves. They worked out who will occupy what space. Shellfish has asked me to ask you to consider changing the language in Section 14 of the lease agreement that describes that either party shall give not less than 30 days written notice to terminate the tenancy. They're asking that they be allowed to be given 60 days notice before we terminate the lease and vice versa.
So it says right now not less than 90?
It says not less than 30 days. That we only have to give them 30 days to vacate. They're asking that we be required to give them 60.
So what you're asking for is permission to modify the lease to allow 60?
They don't really want to leave, period. I'm concerned about extending that length of time, especially if we have a new project that we want to move forward with. I think they need to go ahead and be looking for space, quite honestly. I mean, Community Care Clinic is the one that, and they've agreed to the terms, and that was the big one to me.
And just
I mean, Shellfish has known that they have to be out by the end of the year. I think giving them another 30 days was pretty generous because they were due to move out under CSI's lease by the end of the year.
Well, and we could still...
We're renting them month to month with
Yeah.
a 30-day notice.
And exactly, I think that's the point, is it goes to a month to month. You could tell them to be out, but you would have to start November 1st instead of December 1st.
basically becomes a 2-month lease after the first of the year. And I have explained that the reason that it is month to month is so that the board might be able to explore other avenues for use of that facility that benefit the town in a greater regard.
I mean, I don't think it's the extra 30 days, I don't think is a deal breaker, and I would support going ahead and getting the thing done. But I'm not sure I hear board consensus on that.
I don't care.
I
You
don't
know,
have a problem with that.
It's 30 days, 60 days. Is something up?
I think we discussed it, exploring other options at the board retreat.
No, I meant with them. I meant, why would they want to?
They don't want to move out, period. they don't want to leave, because I think they're worried about where they'd go. But under the terms of our original lease with CSI, we didn't actually lease to Shellfish Sanitation, we leased to CSI.
Right, right.
And they subleased it. They don't really want to move, but at some point, they've got to get out of the building, and they need to be looking sooner.
And I'm kind of looking for them as well.
I hear consensus on
Yeah, I don't care.
giving them the 60 days
Yeah.
then.
Okay, that's all I have.
Board of Commissioners agenda, Commissioner Cahoon?
One thing, and it brought to light this morning as we were discussing the Moongate drainage, I'd like to see us develop a policy about, that fit our drainage plan. That was a drainage thing, but I'm worried about developers coming in and wanting to encroach into utility easements or right-of-ways, and then the developers are gone. Our taxpayers are left with, okay, if they've got a fence or something in a utility easement, that when we want to work, we've got to move it. I'd like to see us develop a formal policy where we don't allow that. Then there's no question about it coming forward, because we're always going to have to be cleaning up these utility and drainage easements or doing work in them. And I'm concerned about developers wanting to put fences and different things into those easements that our taxpayers are going to be kind of stuck with. I think some of those things are, I'm worried about those things coming forward, and I think it's better to be proactive rather than reactive.
But what you're talking about is saying that you can't, here's an easement, I'm the property owner, I put an easement on the property so that utility easements could go through there, and
No.
now I can't put a
I'm
fence
saying
there?
like along NC 12,
Mhm.
there's an effort by, say, Moongate that wants to extend fences out into those drainage easements. And I'm concerned about how do you clean them up unless we start, how does DOT clean up without moving those fences?
They don't, do they?
Don't we have to issue a permit for fence?
Yes, there's a zoning permit for a fence.
And I'm just trying to think ahead rather than having this board deal with a fence here and a fence there and everywhere a little fence.
So we want to research the existing policy, see if there is an existing policy, and then draft something that would address that concern.
Yes.
After all the issues I had with my fence in a private neighborhood, I think that, I think that,
I'm not talking about.
I don't think anybody should be able to put anything up without, I had to get permission, everybody else got to get permission.
I'm not talking about a private fence, I'm talking about one that
I
goes
know, I
into
know.
something that has to be maintained by us
I know.
or DOT.
I mean,
Okay, is that good direction for staff and manager?
Yes, sir.
Anything else, ma'am?
No, that's it for me.
Commissioner Walt?
With the upcoming budget discussions and also an election year, I was wondering if we could consider adding whatever the cost is, to televise candidates' night for Nags Head. We had talked about that before, and in the past, citizens have had to raise money to have it televised, which benefits all of our community. So I just wanted to make sure that we have that included in the budget and hope that everyone agrees to that.
I thought we had already agreed to it.
Well,
I thought so too.
perhaps we had. I just thought I would bring it up for this
I think
budget cycle.
the past, it has been done by
Yeah.
private donation, I know.
It has. But
We
with the
just
budget
want- we
coming
just
up,
want-
I
we
just
just-
wanted to make sure that was included.
We just weren't paying for anybody else's, we were paying for ours, not anybody else's. Is that what you're talking about? You talking about everybody's?
No, I'm talking about when we have candidates
Head's,
night
yeah.
here, Nags Head's candidate night.
The only
Yes.
stipulation I'd like to ask that we do, and I think you and I have talked about that, is that questions be done by Nags Head citizens, not always by outside, because there were people from Nags Head that wanted to ask questions last time
Okay.
that didn't get to because the league people were asking questions. And I don't think that that's what our citizens really want.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
I think the manager heard, and we'll look at it in that budget process. Anything else, ma'am?
Nope. Nothing for-
Mayor Pro Tem?
This is, I guess, is for Ralph, even though it's really out of his bailiwick. it's been brought to my attention that starting just south of Soundside Road on the bypass, that there's a separation, the roadbeds, the finish is separating. There, in some places, you can, during the rain and stuff, you can actually see water, you know, in the crack there in the road. Is there any idea when the next time that the road's going to be recovered, repaved, or? And it runs almost all the way to Whalebone. It looks to me like, you know, of course I know it contracts and expands.
You're talking about the bypass?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't know when the next time it's going to be resurfaced.
Well,
Can find that out. Or at least patched.
it was, you know, if you don't really pay close attention to it, I got to admit, I didn't really pay attention to it. It was brought to my attention, and then was out there looking at it and realized that your wheel, you know, if you have a small car.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, just a little heads up on it.
No, we have the same, there's the same thing on the beach road in the relocation. You can see now when it rains that water stays in the wheel tracks because it's what they call rutting. It has settled in there, but we have the same situation over here.
And I'm sure this is expansion and contraction, but just take a look at it next time you drive down there. That's it, that's all I have.
Sounds like 264 VDOT.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
I wanted to ask y'all's consideration of a resolution in support of House Resolution 819, HR 819, and it's preserving access to the Cape Hatteras National Seashore Recreational Area Act. If you'll bear with me, this is whereas HR 819, introduced by Congressman Walter Jones, NC District 3, to preserve access to the Cape Hatteras National Seashore Recreational Area, reintroduces a previous bill that passed the House of Representatives in the last Congress but failed to make it out of the Senate committee. And whereas H.R. 819 would restore balance and common sense to the National Park Service management by overturning a final rule implemented by them in mid-February 2012, as well as the 2008 U.S. District Court approved consent decree, both of which excessively restrict human access to the recreational area. And whereas H.R. 819 would assure taxpayers the right to access the recreational areas they own by reinstituting the Park Service's 2007 interim management strategy, which was supported by a 113-page biological opinion issued by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, finding that species of concern, including piping plover and turtles, would not be jeopardized. And whereas the Cape Hatteras National Seashore Recreational Area was created by Congress in 1937 as America's first national seashore with the promise that people would always have access for recreation, and whereas a tourism-based economy has been developed on Body Island, Hatteras Island, and Ocracoke Island, where beach access has always been the defining element of the visitor's complete seashore experience and the foundation of the area's economic base upon which thousands of families depend for their livelihood. And now therefore be it resolved that the Town of Nags Head Board of Commissioners supports open public access to the Cape Hatteras National Seashore Recreational Area consistent with the promises made in the enabling legislation, and supports H.R. 819 as effective legislation that would balance resource management with recreational access for Nags Head's residents and visitors this 6th day of March. I'll make that as a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Is there further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. The motion passes unanimously. That was the only piece of business I had.
Got one more.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I promised to make this brief, and thank you. I wanted to ask the police chief to come up and talk about, briefly, about a grant that the police department just received.
And I will be brief, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Manager, Mayor, Board of Commissioners. Just a little bit of exciting news from the police department. Last fall, we applied for a non-matching grant through Project Lifesaver International. This is a company or a corporation business that provides in-depth training for law enforcement and other public safety agencies on the use of specific or specialized equipment to be used during search and rescue for people that with cognitive disorders such as Alzheimer's, dementia, Down syndrome, that have a tendency to wander. This type of equipment is not new. We have been trained on its use for a number of years, but we've always had to borrow equipment, and we've had at times challenges of getting the equipment so we could outfit our residents or our visitors to our area. So we applied for this non-matching grant last fall, and were recently told that we were awarded the grant, which is a value of about $5,000 for equipment and training. The only expense to the police department would be for room and board for the instructor to come down and teach our first responders. And I want to thank Village Realty and First Colony Inn for helping us with those arrangements. But we're certainly excited about this. It will be a use to the people at Brett Haven, at Colony Ridge, as well as residents and visitors that we have worked with in the past. So just want to let you know about that and look forward to moving forward with that in the late spring. Thank you.
Congratulations.
And also wanted to thank the police department and Lisa Ward. Lisa's filling in today for the clerk, and she has done an outstanding job.
Quiet service. Any other business to come before us today? We're going to stand in recess until our mid-month meeting.